heretics. The poets reach the inner edge of the sixth circle and find a great jumble of rocks that had once been a cliff, but which has fallen into rubble as the result of the great earthquake that shook hell when Christ died. Below them lies the seventh circle, and so fetid is the air that arises from it that the poets cower for shelter behind a great tomb until their breaths can grow accustomed to the stench. Dante finds an inscription on the lid of the tomb labeling it as the place in hell of Pope Anastasius. Virgil takes advantage of the delay to outline in detail the division of the lower hell, a theological discourse based on the ethics and the physics of Aristotle, with subsequent medieval interpretations. Virgil explains also why it is that the incontinent are not punished within the walls of Dis, and rather, ingeniously, sets forth the reasons why usury is an act of violence against art, which is the child of nature, and hence the grandchild of God. By art, Dante means the arts and crafts by which man draws from nature. Industry. As he concludes, he rises and urges Dante on. By means known only to Virgil, he is aware of the motion of the stars, and from them he sees that it is about 2 hours before sunrise of Holy Saturday. We came to the edge of an enormous sink, rimmed by a circle of great broken boulders. Here we found ghastlier gangs, and here the stink thrown up by the abyss so overpowered us that we drew back, cowering behind the walls of one of the great tombs, and standing thus, I saw an inscription in the stone and read, I guard Anastasius, once pope, he whom Fontanus led from the straight road. Before we travel on to that blind pit, we must delay until our sense grows used to its foul breath, and then we will not mind it, my master said. And I then, let us find some compensation for the time of waiting. And he, you shall see, I have just that in mind. My son, he began, there are below this wall 3 smaller circles, each in its degree like those who are about to leave, and all are crammed with gods accursed. Accordingly, that you may understand their sins at sight, I will explain how each is prisoned and why. Malice is the sin most hated by God, and the aim of malice is to injure others whether by fraud or violence. But since fraud is the vice of which man alone is capable, God loathes it most. Therefore the fraudulent are placed below, and their torment is more painful. The first below are the violent. But as violence sins in 3 persons, so is that circle formed of 3 descending rounds of crueler torments. Against God, self, and neighbor is violence shown. Against their persons and their goods, I say, as you shall hear set forth with open reason, murder and mayhem are the violation of the person of one's neighbor, and of his goods, harassment, plunder, arson, and extortion. Therefore, homicides and those who strike in malice, destroyers and plunderers, all lie in that first round, and like suffers with like. A man may lay violent hands upon his own person and substance. So, in that second round, eternally in vain, repentants moan the suicides, and all who gamble away and waste the good and substance of their lives, and weep in that sweet time when they should be gay. Violence may be offered the deity in the heart that blasphemes and refuses him, and scorns the gifts of nature, her beauty and bounty. Therefore, the smallest round brands with its marks both Sodom and Cahors, and all who rail at God and his commands in their hearts dark. Fraud, which is a canker to every conscience, may be practiced by a man on those who trust him, and on those who have reposed no confidence. The latter mode seems only to deny the bond of love which all men have from nature. Therefore, within the second circle lie simoniacs, sycophants, and hypocrites, falsifiers, thieves, and sorcerers, grafters, pimps, and all such filthy cheats. The former mode of fraud not only deities denies the bond of nature, but the special trust added by bonds of friendship or blood ties. Hence, at the center point of all creation, in the smallest circle on which Dis is founded, the traitors lie in endless expiation. Master, I said, the clarity of your mind impresses all you touch. I see quite clearly the orders of this dark pit of the blind. But tell me, those who lie in the swamp's bowels, those the wind blows about, those the rain beats, and those who meet and clash with such mad howls, why are they not punished in the rust-red city if God's wrath be upon them? And if it is not, why must they grieve through all eternity? And he, why does your understanding stray so far from its own habit? Or can it be your thoughts are turned along some other way? Have you forgotten that your ethic states the three main dispositions of the soul that lead to those offenses heaven hates? Incontinence, malice, and bestiality, and how incontinence offends God least and earns least blame from justice and charity. Now, if you weigh this doctrine and recall exactly who they are whose punishment lies in that upper hell outside the wall, you will understand at once why they are confined apart from these fierce wraiths, and why less anger beats down on them from the eternal mind. O sun which clears all mists from troubled sight, such joy attends your rising that I feel as grateful to the dark as to the light. Go back a little further, I said, to where you spoke of usury as an offense against God's goodness. How is that made clear? Philosophy makes plain, by many reasons, he answered me, to those who heed her teachings, how all of nature, her laws, her fruits, her seasons, springs from the ultimate intellect of its art. And if you read your physics with due care, you will note, not many pages from the start, that art strives after her by imitation, as the disciple imitates the master. Art, as it were, is the grandchild of creation. By this, recalling the Old Testament near the beginning of Genesis, you will see that in the will of providence man was meant to labor and to prosper. But usurers, by seeking their increase in other ways, scorn nature in herself and her followers. But come, for it is my wish now to go on. The wheel turns, and the wain lies over Charos. The fish are quivering low on the horizon, and there beyond us runs the road we go, down the dark scarp, into the depths below. Canto 11 notes. Line 2, broken boulders. These boulders were broken from the earthquake that shook hell at the death of Christ. Line 3, the stink. The stink is, of course, symbolic of the foulness of hell and its sins. The action of the poets in drawing back from it and their meditations on the nature of sin and are therefore subject to allegorical as well as to literal interpretation. Lines 8 and 9. Anastasius and Photinus. Anastasius II was pope from 496 to 498. This was the time of schism between the Eastern Greek and Western Roman churches. Photinus, deacon of Thessalonica, was of the Greek church and held to the Acacian heresy, which he denied the divine paternity of Christ. Dante follows the report that Anastasius gave communion to Photinus, therefore countenancing his heresy. Dante's sources, however, had probably confused Anastasius II, the Pope, with Anastasius I, who was emperor from 491 to 518. It was the Emperor Anastasius who was persuaded by Photinus to accept the Acacian heresy. Line 17, 3 smaller circles. The poets are now at the cliff that bounds the 6th circle. Below them lie circles 7, 8, and 9. They are smaller in circumference, being closer to the center, but they are all intricately subdivided and will be treated as at much greater length than were the circles of upper hell. Lower hell. The structure of Dante's hell is based on Aristotle, as Virgil makes clear in his exposition, but with certain Christian symbolisms, exceptions, and misconstructions of Aristotle's text. The major symbolisms are the 3 beasts met in Canto 1. The exceptions are the 2 peculiarly Christian categories of sin, paganism and heresy. The misconstructions of Aristotle's text involve the classification of bestiality. Aristotle classified it as a different thing from vice or malice, but medieval commentators construed the passage to mean another sort of malice. Dante's intent is clear, however. He understood Aristotle to make three categories of sin: incontinence, violence, and bestiality, and fraud and malice. Incontinence is punished in the upper hell. The following table sets forth the categories of the lower hell. Heresy, circle 6. The violent and bestial, circle 7. Sins of the lion. Round 1 of circle 7, against neighbors. Round 2 of circle 7, violent against self. Round 3 of circle 7, violent against God, art, and nature. Circle 8 is the fraudulent and malicious, the sins of the leopard. In circle 8, there are 10 buljas. Circle 9 is compound fraud. Line 50, Sodom and Cahors. Both these cities are used as symbols for the sins that are said to have flourished within them. Sodom, Genesis, is of course identified with unnatural sex practices. Cahors, a city in southern France, was notorious in the Middle Ages for its usurers. Line 64, the center point of all creation. In the Ptolemaic system, the earth was the center of the universe. In Dante's geography, the bottom of hell is the center of the earth. Line 70, those who lie, etc. These are, of course, the sinners of the upper hell. Line 73, the rust-red city is Dis. All of lower hell is within the city walls. Line 79, your ethics, the ethics of Aristotle. Line 101, your physics, the physics of Aristotle. Line 113, the wain lies over Charis, etc. The wain is the constellation of the Great Bear. Charis was the northwest wind in classical mythology. Hence, the constellation of the Great Bear now lies in the northwest. The fish is the constellation and zodiacal sign of Pisces. It is just appearing over the horizon. The next sign of the zodiac is Aries. We know from Canto 1 that the sun is in Aries, and since the 12 signs of the zodiac each cover 2 hours of the day, it must now be about 2 hours before dawn. It is therefore approximately 4 a.m. of Holy Saturday. The stars are not visible in hell, but throughout the Inferno, Virgil reads them by some special power which Dante does not explain.